From a faction that stayed invisible at all times to an organization that tried to serve justice, when you think of Unstable SMP's most dangerous faction, one name comes to mind. But you're probably thinking of the wrong one. This is why the Invisible Mafia versus the Law isn't close. Let's start by looking at how each faction operated. The Invisible Mafia, led by Ashswag, was the biggest faction the server had ever seen. They controlled almost the entire server through fear and intimidation, and Ashswag was so confident he didn't even wear armor most of the time. The Mafia forced innocent players to join or die, killed their own members if they failed tasks, and Ashswag set up a master stasis chamber so that if he died, every single person in the Mafia died with him. The Mafia's methods were brutal and direct. Invisible players would hunt you down, blow up your base, destroy entire civilizations like the Fallens, and force you to join or die. They operated through fear and everyone knew exactly who they were and what they were capable of. The Law, led by LettuceK in Season 2, operates completely differently, and this difference is important. Their power comes from manipulation and controlling the narrative about what's happening on the server. LettuceK isn't the strongest fighter, doesn't have the best weapons, isn't even considered one of the most skilled players, but he's intelligent and willing to use tactics most people wouldn't think of. Let's look at the Law's most famous moment, the 2v1000 fight. LettuceK captured thousands of unskilled players and gave them a choice: work for the Law or die. Then he sent these completely inexperienced players to fight Flamefrags and wemmbu, two of the strongest players on the server. Lettuce knew that these players had no chance of winning. He wanted them to lose because that loss gave him something more valuable than a victory. After the fight ended with Flame and wemmbu killing 1,000 players, Lettuce called a massive server-wide event and revealed that these two had killed 1,000 players, 10% of the server's population. He framed them as ruthless serial killers who murdered innocent people, and the entire server believed him even though it was self-defense. That's manipulation at the highest level. You make everyone else beat your enemies by controlling what people believe about them. But before we continue, I want to ask you to subscribe. These videos take hours to research and make, and subscribing would help a ton. Also, let me know in the comments which faction you think would actually win in the fight. The Law controls spawn in the end dimension, giving them unlimited recruitment potential. Every time a player spawns in, the Law recruits them into believing they are fighting for justice. Even when hundreds of lawmen die in battles, they just recruit more the next day from spawn. The Mafia relied on a completely different system. They had a ranking structure with copper, iron, gold, and diamond tiers, and you had to prove yourself through combat and missions to move up. Spoke had to infiltrate the Mafia and work his way up, completing increasingly difficult missions. He literally had to kill an innocent player named I Majestic Rose just to move up to gold tier. To become a diamond tier player in the Mafia, you had to defeat another diamond tier player in actual combat, which meant every diamond rank member had generally proven themselves as one of the strongest fighters on the server. But anyways, let's talk about what happened when players fought each faction. When Spoke's team tried to infiltrate the Mafia, they had to be extremely careful about everything. They couldn't just fight their way through, they had to earn ranks slowly, complete missions perfectly, gain trust over time. The Mafia was so dangerous that the only way to beat them wasn't direct combat. It was finding and destroying their stasis chambers while they weren't looking. Now let's look at what happened when skilled players fought the Law. Wemmbu walked into the Law's base, dropped a nuke with an orbital strike cannon, and walked out without a scratch. Flamefrags soloed Law forces multiple times with no difficulty. In the 2v1000 fight, Flame and wemmbu fought 1,000 lawmen and won decisively, farming kills for the most of the fight. The only reason wemmbu got captured was because he was exhausted after killing hundreds of players and ran out of resources. When Spoke fought against the Law in the Minecraft Trapper versus 1,000 players, he killed hundreds of lawmen by himself just using traps and basic strategy, because the Law's forces were so inexperienced that simple traps worked repeatedly. Compare that to when Parrot and Weefies tried to fight the Mafia directly. They couldn't walk in and fight like wemmbu did with the Law. They had to run and hide constantly, needed entire teams and elaborate plans, had to build District 13 as a safe haven just to survive. And even with all that preparation, they still couldn't kill Ashswag, because his master stasis meant killing him would kill all their friends trapped in the Mafia. Now let's talk about something most people overlook, and this is where the debate really shifts. The Mafia had a very specific type of member. The Mafia's ranks included players like Clownpierce, literally one of the deadliest Minecraft players to ever exist. Flamefrags, who went on a training arc to become even stronger and never gives up regardless of odds. It's Real Me, who is considered Minecraft's best player. Marlo, who guts the Mafia team with enough gear and skill to take over the entire server. Well, that was until she got exposed for being Mario. Manepear, who literally trains other players to become combat masters. Minutetech, who guts the end dimension and has fought players like wemmbu to a standstill. These were diamond and gold tier players who proved themselves through actual combat. Now let's look at the Law's roster. Most members are what Flamefrags and wemmbu call chungies. Completely inexperienced players who just spawned in and got recruited immediately. They got protection 2 diamond armor and a white banner shield. That's it for equipment and training. LettuceK admits he recruits directly from spawn constantly, which means the vast majority of the Law's forces have zero combat experience or PvP knowledge. The Law does have some competent members like Deputy Ace, Stars Lord, God of War, and the Ouroboros as high-ranking officers. They have elite force members who get protection 4 netherite armor with black banner shields. But here's the question, how many truly skilled fighters does the Law actually have compared to the Mafia's proven diamond tier players? Let's look at specific matchups. When the Law sent 1,000 players against just 2 opponents, even with a 500 to 1 advantage, they still lost badly. Flame and wemmbu killed hundreds of them, and the only player who posed a real threat was That Guy, who they eventually took out. The rest were just free kills. Think about what that means. 1,000 players with a 500 to 1 advantage couldn't beat 2 skilled opponents. Now imagine if those 2 skilled players were instead facing Clownpierce or It's Real Me. That's a completely different fight with a completely different outcome. The Mafia attracted strong players who wanted power and were willing to do whatever it took. That's why players like Clownpierce and Flamefrags were part of the Mafia at various points, because the faction was genuinely powerful and offered real opportunities for skilled players to gain more power. The Mafia's recruitment was selective and based on actual strength. The Law attracts whoever spawns in and accepts their recruitment offer, which means mostly inexperienced players who don't know any better. Any skilled player who works with the Law like Leerwook or bad members do it for political reasons or temporary alliances, not because the Law is actually strong enough to protect them. Let's look at what happened when each faction's leadership was threatened. When players tried to kill Ashswag, he would escape using his stasis chambers and send even more dangerous forces after them. The threat level increased when he went after Ashswag because he had the power and skilled members to make it regret it. When LettuceK gets questioned by members like Skeptical or Deputy Ace, he resorts to public executions and manipulation to maintain control. He executed Skeptical by dropping an anvil on him in front of the entire server just to make an example, because his leadership is based on fear and narrative control rather than combat power. Now here's where we need to address the elephant in the room. Let's actually count the top tier fighters on each side, because this is where the debate ends. The Mafia had Clownpierce, one of the deadliest players in Minecraft history. It's Real Me, literally the best Minecraft player. Flamefrags on the training arc to become even stronger. Marlo, Minecraft's biggest cheater. And that's just the diamond tier players we know about. There were also dozens of gold tier players who proved themselves through combat. The Law has LettuceK, who isn't known for combat skill, Deputy Ace and maybe a handful of officers who are competent fighters, some elite force members with better armor, and then thousands of inexperienced chungies who get destroyed every single time they fight anyone with actual skill. The skill gap isn't just significant, it's absolutely massive! Here's the reality people don't want to admit. Numbers don't matter when the skill gap is this huge. We've seen this proven multiple times. 2 skilled players beat 1,000 unskilled ones. 1 skilled player with traps beats hundreds of unskilled ones. Every time skilled players fight the Lost Forces, it's not a contest, it's just a farming simulator. At this point, Unstable SMP might as well be Grow a Garden, bruh. And if you're thinking, but the Law has unlimited recruitment so they can just keep sending more players. Remember that the Mafia proved they could handle massive numbers. They took over the entire server despite constant opposition, destroyed civilizations, survived infiltration attempts, and the only reason they fell was because Spoke destroyed their stasis chambers, not because anyone beat them in combat. So let's imagine what would actually happen if both factions went to war. The Mafia would send Clownpierce, It's Through Me, and Flamefrags to the lost positions, probably with invisibility potions. These 3 players alone would tear through hundreds of inexperienced lawmen before anyone figured out what was happening. Then the rest of the Mafia's diamond and gold tier players would join in, and it would be complete massacre. The Law's only possible advantage is their control of spawn for recruitment, but that doesn't matter when your recruits are getting killed faster than you can replace them by players who are infinitely more skilled. It's like trying to fight a professional MMA fighter by sending 100 untrained people at them one after another. The skill gap is insurmountable. Damn bro, that's a big word. I bet my English teacher is mad proud of me right now. Remember when wemmbu destroyed the Law's base by just walking in and dropping a nuke? Now imagine if the Mafia, with all their coordination and skilled players, decided to do coordinated attacks on the Law's positions. The Law couldn't stop one skilled player with a nuke. How would they possibly stop an organized assault from the most dangerous players on the server working together? When you look at the combat records, the skill levels, and everything else, the Mafia would absolutely destroy the Law in any direct confrontation, and it wouldn't even be close. The Law's power comes from manipulation, not from actual combat strength. The Mafia's power came from having the deadliest and most skilled players in Minecraft history all working together. In the war between these 2 factions, skill beats numbers every time, especially when the skill gap is this massive. The only reason the Law exists in Season 2 is because the Mafia was already destroyed in Season 1. If both factions existed at the same time, the Law would have been crushed within days by players they couldn't even compete with. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments if you still think the Law would stand any chance against the Mafia. And if you want to see more Unstable SMP breakdowns, check out the video on screen. Anyways, goodbye!